to Driving Conversations, the only show filled with high-octane driving conversations about technology and innovation here in Orange County. From the one organization fueling both, Octane Driving Conversations, with your host, Austin Wildman.
All right. Perfect. All right, folks. Hey, welcome to Octane Driving Innovation, the only place in Orange County where we are committed to bringing innovation to action. And we're going to get things done here. If you're in the tech and medical field and you're in Orange County, you're in Southern California, Octane's the place to be. Jack, how you doing?
I'm doing good. How are you, Austin?
Yeah, I'm doing okay, actually. Why
glad
not?
to hear it.
So, you know, Palms Beach, a few miles away. I can live with that.
Yeah, that's terrific.
So how you doing? So you're brand new to tech. You've never done anything in tech before?
Well, not exactly. I've been in it a while.
Right. Actually, been in a while. So do I have this right? You were actually the number one branch manager, the only number one branch manager in 2 different locations out of 86 total for, what was that company again?
Xerox.
I've heard of them.
Yes, a name
Awesome.
from the past.
And you went from Alaska all the way down to here in California.
Yeah, I started my Xerox career after 3 years in the U.S. Navy, a couple of them in Vietnam, here in L.A.
Okay.
And I wanted to get ahead, and who wanted to be the branch manager in Alaska? Nobody with any common sense or modesty, but I was glad to take it. It was the smallest branch in the U.S., and after 6 years, they put me in place, 6 years of having sold and been in management and staff positions and so forth. And I was able to turn it into the number one branch in the U.S. It was the smallest branch in the country, only 110 technical service.
Who would have thought?
Yeah, and then I went to a much larger branch, L.A. South, often called the aerospace branch, and I struggled with that for a year. I told myself I shouldn't micromanage, that I was going from 110 people to 330, but I guess I didn't take it to heart, and so I foundered for a while, and then I said, the heck with this, put together some business plans, cleaned out my senior staff, put in the people I wanted, got a real good action-oriented plan in place, and then I was able to turn that into the number one branch out of 86 branches in the U.S. And
Cool.
after I did that, I said, something's going on here.
Right. And let me make sure I got that timeline right. College, went to Yale, economics, right?
Economics, yep.
Economics. So from Yale to, you jumped in the Navy, went to Vietnam, came back, and then you got into Xerox.
Yes.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Well, hey, thank you for your service, and it's great to have you on the show, of course.
Great to be here.
Well, given that period of time, set the tone for, as far as the tech world is concerned. You're getting home, you're getting out of service, you're a civilian now. What's the tech world looking like? You talked about Xerox. What's kind of the culture, if you will?
It was the best kind of job then, and it still is. Okay? There's so much happening in tech. It attracts so many of the brightest minds. And if you've got something that's working, you can move up quickly. Your company can, you can, because people want tech that makes their lives easier, their personal lives, their business lives. It's exciting. It's the best place to be. So it attracts a lot of the top folks. And if you're working with a lot of the top folks, it's making you better, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And we'll talk about making other people better. As far as leadership is concerned, given that we're talking today about how to coach people, how to be a leader, this is not uncharted waters. No pun intended on you being in the Navy.
Right.
You've actually started 2 tech companies yourself.
Yes.
Okay.
And one of them, Ameritech Communications, I sold to a publicly traded British company, an aggregator. It was then acquired by an American aggregator, and guess what? The guy who ran the first company I started ultimately was Bill Carpoo.
I have heard of him.
Of Octane fame.
Yeah,
he did a great job, too. In fact, in fairness to Bill, it was 3 times, my company had 300 individuals, and then a couple of other companies were added on, and Bill managed to conglomerate quite well. In fact, my folks were very happy to have him in charge. I had moved on to start a second company.
Awesome. And Octane's quite pleased to have him as well.
Yeah.
But so jumping into that, we've obviously talked a little bit before this, and when it really comes to leadership courses, and really how you coach, is that the right word? Coach some of these
I
tech
like to use the
SEOs?
word development. Because
okay.
that's what I did in the real world.
Okay.
I've been with Xerox, I've been with Gartner, I've been in the Navy, and I had my own companies that I started. And the whole key, of course, is getting the right people in place, hiring well, firing well, and then developing them on a one-on-one basis so that you're able to fully exploit their talents. And I love that. And teaching, to me, I've done it, but I envision a classroom of 10 to 20 people.
Right.
And hold your questions, please. We'll cover that on the next slide. I love doing it one-on-one because then you can gauge how the guy or gal is processing it, and then you can get back with them again on the same issue. And I just love that, and I kind of fell into it, actually,
right.
In this gig with Growth Accelerators. I started out doing classroom work, and I met a young woman at an alumni event. She was an MIT she is an MIT grad in mechanical engineering for a South County medical device company. And I can't remember if it was her idea or mine, but one of us said, hey, why don't we just cover your material at lunch once a week? And I loved it. And it was established that we would proceed at her pace. And then I got a lot out of interacting with her, too.
Great.
And it just keeps spreading and spreading and spreading. I do continue to do corporate work where, if it's the most practical way to give my course in front of 20 people for a whole day, and I slow down and I make it as interactive as possible. But I really love doing it one-on-one.
And we've talked, and just to kind of highlight, Yale's obviously got a great reputation. You've been in the corporate world. But as we were talking, I found something very interesting. Your development is focused on one-on-one,
yeah.
which is a little unique there too. But not only do you bring practical sense and real world experience, but you described it as street.
Yeah.
Do I have that right?
Yeah. I mean, yes, I've got the Yale degree in economics, and it was very, very useful in terms of giving me an understanding of gold flows and all macro and microeconomics. However, what I really want to pass on to others, Austin, is everything I learned in the Navy, at Xerox, in my own companies, at Gartner. After I was the #1 branch manager for the second time at Xerox, I said, hold it. I know I'm not the smartest manager that God ever made. I know I'm not the most inspiring leader that was ever put on the earth, but I can't deny that this has happened twice, so what is it? And then I thought really hard, and I figured it out. All along, I've been identifying, cataloging, and mastering certain real-world techniques that help us accomplish two objectives. Number one, spike the numbers. Whether you're in sales, marketing, engineering, finance, spike the numbers. Number two, curtail employee turnover, because the longer your people are with you, the better they're going to get, especially if they're the aces that you need in these key positions.
Right.
And so I made it my purpose to transfer these insights and techniques and charts and so forth to other people. I'm not going to take somebody who, for example, is good at management, good attention to detail, well organized, and make him an inspirational leader in terms of 6'4" and plays rock guitar, but I can transfer motivational techniques to him and her that will work in the real world to advance their followership and get more production out of their people. And it's a kick to do. And
right.
Oh, by the way, I think I've said this, and maybe not. I didn't invent all this stuff. Maybe 30%. And the other 70% came from other men and women I've been working with over the years. And I don't care where the idea comes from, whether it comes from Bill Carpoo's head or your head or my head. I just want something that's going to work in my environment. And so I have an obligation, you might say, to pass this stuff on for that reason, if no other.
Right.
You know what I mean? I mean, I didn't invent all this stuff. People aren't getting a lot of the training that I received. I was fortunate enough to be with Xerox when it, along with GE and IBM, was an academy company. And I do feel an obligation to pass this stuff off. It's kind of like, gosh, if you knew this stuff, it would make so many challenges so much easier.
Right.
You know what I mean? So
Absolutely.
I'm a jerk if I don't pass it on. I'm a bad guy, and I don't want to be a bad guy.
Well, you know, you mentioned earlier, which I haven't heard before, is hiring well, but also firing well.
Yes.
And that kind of goes into our conversation we had earlier about how to deliver good news, how to deliver bad news. It's a little subjective, but I think you had an interesting story.
Yeah, can I tell you, we didn't talk
Sure.
about this, but the firing bit, you know how I learned that?
How?
In the Navy. I was a kid right out of college, 22 years old, and I had 20 young sailors, and thank God some senior ones reporting to me who knew what they were doing. And we had this one ne'er-do-well who wouldn't show up for operations, whether it was taking on stores, taking on fuel, and I kept trying to turn him around and persuade him. And the captain of the ship caught me, and he said, "Mr. Finnell, we can court-martial men in this Navy. Doesn't have to be about treason." He said, "Here you are spending all your time trying to turn around this loser. Meanwhile, Mr. Finnell, you're neglecting the development of your good people." Whoa. Did that make me feel like, boy, am I blowing it. I'm being so arrogant that I think I can turn everybody around, but what really hurt me is here's all these cool, nice, eager guys, and I'm neglecting their development. I never forgot that for the rest of my life.
Yeah, we didn't talk about that. That's
I know. I just thought about it.
That's a good point. So what you're saying is don't get caught up. Sometimes we get caught up so much in turning around the bad egg, so to speak, when really you got to let your good dogs run, so to speak.
I like the way you said that. That's exactly right. I do
hunting
know,
term for the folks listening. Doing
good.
Yeah.
I do know how to fire people. There are techniques. There are legal implications. I understand all that cold, and including myself, and I think I'm a fairly tough guy when it comes to that sort of thing. I've never seen anybody fire somebody too early, and you've got to make sure that you don't just look the other way, because if you've got aces working for you, one of the reasons they're in that company is they like working with other aces. So you really can't have ne'er-do-wells or people who aren't performing in your group and expect that it's not going to have any consequences. But again, I have techniques, exercises, things that people can do to ensure that they're getting the best out of their people, and that if they're making some changes with respect to moving somebody into a different position or even outside of the company, they're doing it with honor, with intellect, with good judgment.
Hey, I had a little light bulb that just went on here, and obviously, you know, we can't afford graphics to have it above my head right now. But what you just said kind of spiked an interest. You have we'll just call it a negative. What was the word you used? Not nonchalant. What was it? You called him a ne'er-do-well.
Yeah.
We'll call it a ne'er-do-well.
Yeah.
So you have someone who's ne'er-do-well. They're not performing, and they're almost infecting maybe some of the aces that are in the company and could possibly drive them away.
Yes.
Wow.
Absolutely. Yeah.
That's huge, especially for startup companies that are within OCTANE.
Yeah, it is. Okay. You got to make sure that there's a great book that I have everybody read in this regard. It's called Analyzing Performance Problems, and it's a series of decision trees, and it ensures that you're not making an emotional decision, and it helps you clarify your own thinking, and it also helps you cover your bases with your boss and with HR, so everybody can see that you've been doing this in a deliberate and honorable way. One of the questions, you'll love this one, is could he do it if his life depended on it? If the answer is no, then let's get him into a different position. I mean, I've had jobs when I was a kid that I wasn't ideally made out for. I mean, so sometimes you got to move people into a different position, and we encourage them to do that. And if it's a ne'er-do-well who isn't going to do well at all in your company, then you take them out.
Now, sometimes people look at athletes. We talked about this.
Oh, yeah.
And they say, oh, they're guaranteed to do well. They're an athlete. You had an interesting perspective about that.
Yes, I did. And it came from observing a fellow who was a sales rep in the first company I started, and he was doing quite well. His name is Charlie Eberling, and he had been the captain of the swim team at BYU, and he was a highly successful athlete, and he was very highly successful in my company in sales. And I pulled him aside. I said, Charlie, you're kicking butt in sales. You're a great athlete. And I always expect that people who are superior athletes like you are always going to do well because of the competitive nature and so forth. But I got to say, I've hired some very outstanding athletes in the past, including some pros who didn't work out so well. So give me some guidance. And he started laughing, and he said, Jack, you just assume because I was the captain of the swim team that I'm a great jock. I did do exceedingly well, but I ain't no natural. I had to really work at it. I had to really, really, really put out. And he said, I'm not what you would call I'm not a natural athlete. I'm just driven. And he said, sometimes you get these guys and gals, they're so gifted that doesn't necessarily mean they're going to be competitive. I said, thanks, pal. And it was several years into my career until I had that one figured out, thanks to Charlie. And then I started interviewing people for that particular role, sales, based on their history of competitive behavior. And I remember asking a young lady once, so tell me, is there anything you can refer to in your background that speaks to your competitiveness? And she smiled. She said, oh, yeah. I said, go ahead. She said, when my two girlfriends and I in our college summer years were painting houses to make some money, I could paint a house in 1 week. It always took them a week and a half, and I loved it. I said, hired. She turned out to be a superstar, too.
No kidding.
Yeah.
Wow.
So you never know, and that's why I say a lot of what I pass on. And by the way, some of it is indeed formalized. In order to graduate, you have to complete a business plan, a 1 or 2 pager focused on a business objective. That's something that's always helped me. But a lot of it does come from these anecdotes, such as the one I just told you about Linda, the house painter, and Charlie Eberling, the salespeople. And that helps people remember them.
Right.
When you can put a story around it, it makes it more convincing, which, by the way, helps my curriculum because I keep getting updated stories from the guys and gals I've been working with.
Perfect. Well, I tell you what, I want to leave here with 2 things today.
All right.
So for all of our listeners, people who are listening right now think you're great, right? Leave me with 2 points. I'm listening to this. I walk away. Give me 2 points that you want to leave everybody with. I got to remember 2 things.
Yeah. I think I'll repeat myself in this regard. I want people who engage with me to understand that my total focus will be on them, their company, and their ability to do 2 things. Number 1, accelerate your performance. Get those numbers up. Grow. Get bigger, better. That's number 1. And number 2, curtail employee turnover. That's what it's all about.
Wow.
That's what people will gain, because I think those are the most 2 important things in growing a business successfully, and I want to transfer that to the people I'm working with.
2 great points. 2 outstanding points. And we have a little prop here today. You showed this with me. People who graduate your program get a little plaque.
Yeah, it's not an easy course. You've got to work. I mean, once they get into it, they love it, thank God. But yes, I want to dignify all the effort that they've made in the sessions that they've visited with me. And, yeah, I give them a signed document that congratulates them for successful completion.
Well, how about that? Well, Jack, I want to thank you so much for your time today. And if I'm looking for you, I can find you on Growth Services in OCTANE?
Yes,
I can find you there.
Growth Accelerators is the name of my company, and it's in your Growth Services section.
Growth Services platform. I like that. And I tell you what, we're absolutely thrilled to have you on board here. You're very successful history, not only in business. You're a great guy, and it's been a pleasure getting to know you.
Thanks, Austin.
All right.
Very nice.
Thank you very much for joining us with Driving Innovation with OCTANE. We're going to bring innovation to action. We're going to make things happen here. Why don't you join us? Thank you.